by the name of Wilhelm Koning worked as an assistant of the National Museum of Iraq and began noticing ancient artifacts of a very fine silver coated in small trace amounts of gold, similar to the technique of electroplating. This led to further supporting experiments by Willard Gray and W. Hansen that recreated galvanic cells from the Baghdad battery using both grape juice and, again, using vinegar, another common chemical available at the time. New Guinean iguanodon. Described similar to that of a real-life Jurassic Park type scenario is that of the local encounters residents experienced in Papua New Guinea a few miles south of Rabaul. Back in the month of March 2004, locals began reporting in mass waves that a dinosaur that stood over 3 meters tall had a body that was large and grey in colour, that possessed the head similar to that of a dog and had the tail of a crocodile, was terrorising a small village and destroying everything in its path. This led to multiple news outlets in the area also reporting the same finding, and the local police quickly began investigating the matter. When the police entered the small village, they reported that there indeed was some kind of large creature wreaking havoc and reported it immediately to all the stations and emergency services nearby. This led the government to send out an SBS alert, a special broadcasting emergency service alert, that reported that a police hunting party had gone out in search of the creature out in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and that villagers in the volcanic island province of East New Britain should evacuate if able. A reporter by the name of Christine Semay, after hearing the initial reports by other news outlets of the creature, immediately raced out to the scene of the crime to better understand what was transpiring. This led to her not only seeing the creature, but able to write down a complete description of its behaviours, size, and appearance. Other reporters surfaced claiming that 3 dogs had been eaten by the creature, and 6 police officers armed with M16 assault rifles had taken the creature down and was to be examined for further study at a hidden location. The disappearance of Bermeja Island. Made popular by the BBC's documentary Mexico's Missing Island, Bermeja Island is a phantom islet that, according to maps as recent as the middle of the 19th century, should currently be lying off of the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. However, for some inexplicable reason, when a recent survey was conducted back in 1997, involving a team of surveyors charting lands to update the Mexican border, the team was unable to locate the Bermeja Island and seemingly found that it had completely vanished from existence. This proved to be a very prominent issue for the Mexican government, as the Bermeja Island helped the country of Mexico extend its borders another 14 miles past the land claimed on this island. This then allowed the country's territorial borders to cover sensitive areas of water located off of the coasts of the island that otherwise would have been deemed international waters and then could be used by any other nation whatsoever. This border extension was due solely to the existence of the small island as outlined in the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea that strictly specifies that a nation's territorial border that extends out into open waters can only be up to 14 miles off of the furthermost coast under the nation's influence. This led many different conspiracy theorists to question that perhaps the island was purposefully destroyed by the United States government in an effort to gain access to these waters that lied within the extended borders of Mexico. Additionally, this pushed the Mexican government to launch a detailed investigation into the area in an attempt to better understand what took place. On March 20th of 2009, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, as instructed by the Mexican government, was at the center of investigations all throughout the region of where the island was said to rest in an attempt to naturally explain the island's disappearance. The team used an oceanographic vessel known as the Justo Sierra, of which was equipped with state-of-the-art devices to help uncover any low-lying lands or completely demolished areas. However, at the end of June of that year, the investigation was ended with overwhelming evidence that not only was there no evidence of such conspiracy, but that there had been no vestiges of an island ever existed in the area, sunken or otherwise. the Area 51 caller and Art Bell. Back on September the 11th, 1997, a man who worked at Area 51 called in to Coast AM. He was terrified for his life. His voice was trembling. He described extra-dimensional beings. He even mentioned plots made by the government that would drastically change the world we live in. They want the major population centres wiped out, so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable, he said. To make the situation even more terrifying, the satellite transmission was lost. 7 months later, Art Bell received another call from the same man. This time, the man claimed his first call was a prank, a hoax. Ever since the second call, there were many debates related to these calls. Was the first call real? Why was he so terrified if it was not the truth? There is a possibility both of these calls were fake, but it is surely very strange that the satellite went out during the first call. The satellite going off at that exact moment is extremely weird. Many people believe the first call was actually true. They believe he called it a hoax because he had been scared for his life. He might have wanted to have peace and not be bothered by media. It is extremely hard to determine why this man decided to make these calls in the first place, but it is surely a mystery we are never going to get a real answer to. Stonehenge. Always a major fascination amongst the locals of the area and researchers from around the world, Stonehenge has proven to be quite a mystery to anyone who even attempts to try to understand its construction and the techniques behind it. Not only are the large blocks used so massive that even modern means of construction would fail in regards to establishing the Stonehenge, but the source of the blocks appears to have been carved from hundreds of miles away, which lead many researchers to question the ability of transporting such large stones to the area. To add to this bizarre strangeness of the formation of the Stonehenge, it has been discovered that the structure appears to have been built with astonishing precision in its placement and carved creation. The structure appears to be able to be used as a complex calendar and can even keep track of time to an incredibly mysterious, accurate degree. This does insinuate, however, that not only did the ancients have the technology to cut the stones with laser precision, transport the massive blocks, lift them with tremendous force, and place them with perfect alignment, but that our ancestors also had the ability to make megalithic constructions in a very short span of time. This continues to baffle researchers to this day who work to uncover more secrets regarding Stonehenge, such as its weird electromagnetic properties and special materials used in its creation. Others have even argued that the formation of the Great Stonehenge could be direct proof of ancient technologies and extraterrestrial intervention. Andrew Basiago, a lawyer with time-travelling experience. As strange as it might sound, this Seattle lawyer claims that he actually time-travelled too. Andrew Basiago not only claims he travelled to the future, but he also claims to have been travelling to Mars and the past. Andrew has some very interesting claims. One of them is his Mars travel back in 1981, together with young Barack Obama and William Stillings. Apparently, they were all involved in a Defense Advanced Research Projects agency, creating a time machine. He also claims that the project named Pegasus was actually active between 1968 and 1972. This project led them to the creation of real working time machine. Andrew claims he had used the time machine to travel back to the year 1863, just to listen to one of Abraham Lincoln's speeches, and he also travelled to the year 2054. According to his claims, the United States government frequently used this time machine to deploy various military units. Unlike most of the time travellers, Andrew did not provide us with any future predictions that are worth mentioning. The Wyoming incident, the mysterious TV transmission. The Wyoming incident is probably one of the most deliberated and researched pieces. There is a possibility you have never even heard of this one, but do not worry. The entire incident was explained as a television broadcast hijacking. The hacker behind all of this managed to interrupt a local program channel and aired his own video for whole 6 minutes during a newscast. The video was extremely bizarre, confusing and very unsettling. there were multiple disembodied heads, strange facial expressions, all from various camera angles. Soon after, a special presentation has been shown, followed by a message. You will see such pretty things. This video has been remembered. It had rather strange effects on its viewers. People who decided not to change the channel, and they continued to watch the video. They were slowly experiencing dizziness, headaches, vomiting, and physical discomforts. To make it even worse, some of them were feeling paranoia, followed by visual and auditory hallucinations as well. After the examination of the sounds which played throughout the video, the researchers found that the frequency was the reason for all these physical and mental issues. Frequencies within 17 Hz and 19 Hz range are known to cause distorting vision, headaches, nausea, and vibrations of the human eyeball. 18 Hz frequency is often said to be the cause of supernatural and paranormal occurrences. These result from a certain electrical frequency or sound, and they can get different responses from the human body. Aside of very disturbing sounds, there were a series of numbers to be seen, displayed as 333, 333, 333. People managed to explain this as a sum of each set of threes is 9. When we invert all three, it becomes a 666. The Forest Fen treasure of the Rocky Mountains. Famed millionaire, art dealer and author Forrest Fenn was confronted with his own mortality back in 1988 after getting diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer. After pondering for a few years about his life and the legacy he had left behind in the world, in an almost Willy Wonka-like fashion, Forrest Fenn took a substantial amount from his art collection and priced artifacts valued at $10 million today and hid it inside of a wooden box in a random part of the Rocky Mountains. He later detailed in a poem several clues to help treasure seekers locate the hidden riches, and even further confirmed in an interview back in May of 2017 that though people had figured out the clues and potential locations of the treasure, none had discovered the clues in the correct order and have failed to locate the treasure specifically. He later clarified that several treasure seekers had been roughly within 200 feet of the treasure and many more within 500 feet of the box. Most treasure hunters today are still in search of the famed treasure of Forrest Fenn, and none have provided any amount of substantial evidence of obtaining the treasure, which further inspires treasure hunters to continue their search in the hopes of the famed riches and luxurious life that accompany it. It's important, however, to not get your hopes up too high. Although it is confirmed that the treasure exists, Forrest Fenn himself claimed that it would probably take 10,000 years before a single soul will ever find the treasure. This does not deter true treasure hunters though, as they write that the thrill of treasure hunting, hiking through the Rocky Mountains and working to be credited as the one who figures out the clues and find the treasure is more than reward on its own, and that the money involved is merely an added pleasure. Easter Island Heads. On April 5th of 1722, Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen visited the Easter Islands and remained to be the first outside human contact with the natives of the region. Roggeveen and his crew wrote vast documents and creating many detailed drawings of the island and large stones that appeared to be buried deep into the ground due to natural erosions and winds. What made the crew awe in the sight of these large stones is that they appeared to have been large statues carved from massive rocks and moved across great distances that were seemingly impossible to accomplish. The locals had stories that explained that the statues were floated to their positions by their powerful kings and priests that had the ability to transport these large stones. Later, in a BBC documentary, many researchers would revisit the island in an attempt to explain the large stone statues, but failed to come up with any reliable hypothesis as to the movement, creation and placement of the massive stone heads. Many have subscribed to the theory that large rolling logs would have the ability to transport the stones. However, the size of the larger heads are physically impossible to move with rolling logs, as there are no trees with trunks thick enough to support the massive weight of the Easter Island heads. Dendera bulb. Found in the Egyptian Hathor temples were vast hallways and even deeper constructions that seemed completely void of light. Many Egyptologists and archaeologists believed these areas to have been lit using torches or mirrors to reflect the sunlight, but further investigation showed no residue or evidence of soot on the ceilings, as would be common with such findings, and after inputting several mirrors in areas believed to reflect light, the light of the mirrors would dim before being able to illuminate the temples and their vast hallways. It became a mystery soon enough to the Egyptologists, who could not understand why ancient Egyptians would build such a temple only for it to remain dark inside eternally. It was not until they began reading the hieroglyphics on the walls of the temples and looking at the carvings within the stone reliefs before they began to realize that something even more strange was the case. Referred to as dendera bulbs, the stone reliefs depicted light bulbs throughout the temple in incredible detail, from the glass surrounding tubes to the power cord and even the lit inner filament inside the tube that is used to generate the light of the bulb itself. Given this finding and the temple's lack of conventional lighting, it appeared to many that perhaps ancient Egyptian technology was far more advanced than originally interpreted, and that possible sources of artificial light could have been in place thousands of years before the modern discovery of electricity. How does ASMR work? The Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, to in the mainstream as ASMR, is more than just a trend sweeping across the internet. In fact, it is one of the biggest mysteries in medical science to this day. Roughly 95% of the population can experience it, the rest simply cannot, and the reasons for how and why it can be experienced are even further shrouded in mystery. For those that are not already aware of what ASMR is and wish to try the experience for yourself, it is common to find videos all across YouTube that will play sounds that can cause this sensation. ASMR is described medically as an experience characterized by that of a static-like or tingling sensation on the skin that typically begins on the scalp and moves down the back of the neck and the upper spine. It is currently not known as to what can cause our brain to begin feeling this tingling sensation that is just caused by listening to auditory stimuli of a certain nature, nor the fact that certain soft sounds and whispers can cause this feeling. Some argue that it could quite possibly be an evolutionary adaptation that is in most people that allows parents to softly calm their children and lull them to sleep, and that this sensation works to relax stresses and other sensations to cause an easier sleep pattern. There is not much information to support this theory, however, and so any further advancements made relative to understanding the direct cause of ASMR have not yet been discovered. Why are there different blood types? Not much has been known about blood types since their discovery, and is often the center of mystery around topics of illnesses and immunity. The variation of blood types that many people are aware of, known as A, B, O grouping, has been difficult to understand since their discovery no more than 100 years ago. These variations in blood types refer to the appearance of different antigens in the blood of an individual that can cause blood donors and recipients to have a bad reaction and rejection if the antigens do not accurately match, but the nature of these antigens and of the cause for the blood types themselves seem to have no real purpose. It was believed that blood type antigens can work to prevent infections, but studies surrounding infections of all types have proven to be inconclusive. In most studies, it has found rather that certain bacteria can mimic blood antigens, making them harder to detect from white blood cells and the body's natural immune system, meaning that certain blood types can be more susceptible to different diseases, such as how people with the blood type A are more vulnerable to smallpox, and people with the blood type B are more affected by E. coli infections. The people that are type O, which is the most common blood type, are perfectly fine without the antigens entirely. So then it begs the question, if blood types appear to worsen the condition of fighting infections and cause other evolutionary disadvantages, then why do they still exist? Why did they ever exist in the first place? Scientists struggle to understand these questions and provide answers, but it is safe to assume that understanding blood types can lead to newer discoveries that may shed light into a secret vital role these antigens can play in the development of health and medicine. Why do we need sleep? It might seem obvious to people who hear this question and believe that the need for sleep is already a predefined and well understood phenomenon of the medical world. This is hardly the case. In fact, even the evolutionary advantages of sleep are not entirely known to research scientists studying this strange need. A misconception that people often seem to have is that sleep allows our body ample resetting time and our mind to relax and shut down to allow us to perform better during the day. The truth is, however, that sleep is not a resting period, and that our mind actually begins going through a higher performance known as an active period, in which a lot of different functions begin happening for no real understood reason. These various functions can range from information processing, restoration, and even memory strengthening. One of the added benefits of sleep, weirdly enough, is that it helps our minds reinforce information retrieved during the day and play a vital role in memory retention. What is all the more odd, however, is that no one really knows how or why this occurs, and even though sleep is the single most activity humans will do throughout their lives, the secrets surrounding sleep continues to elude us. A question that further leaves scientists scratching their heads in confusion is the argument of evolutionary advantage. What could possibly be the advantage to forcing a member of the animal kingdom to spend 1/3 of its natural life unconscious and vulnerable, unable to eat or stay on alert for predators or even just perform natural bodily functions? This strangeness is only compounded further when analysing that every single member of the animal kingdom requires sleep, and to deny sleep for a prolonged period of time could result in seizures and then subsequently your passing. But why is that? No one really knows why sleep is so required and why, without it, you can die. Perhaps there is some supernatural secret to the idea of the abstract world that sleep provides us, and the answer might be far more extraordinary than scientists can understand at this moment in time. Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. Obscure and unknown by many is the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, a relic that has often been referred to as the Thunderstone. Thunderstones have often been referenced by many different cultures from around the world, originally seen as large stone eggs that fall from the skies as a gift from a thunder god associated with the culture. Interestingly enough, this Thunderstone was discovered back in 1872 and was believed to have been found in Meredith, New Hampshire, as workers were preparing the land for construction. The stone was regarded as being 4 inches long, 2.5 inches thick, and was described as being a dark, egg-shaped stone with a variety of carved symbols and 2 large holes burrowed deep into the stone. Many ancient astronaut experts describe the stone as being similar to that of a head of an astronaut, as one side of the egg-shaped stone shows a man's face inside the egg, as if he were wearing a large helmet. The stone appears to have also been made with such incredible precision that the authenticity of the find was put into question. Back in 1994, researchers performed a borescope analysis of the stone's holes and found that the appearance of the holes indicated having been constructed with power tools. The holes were described as being extremely regular throughout, with no unevenness or variation. This could not be the case, however, as the stone was discovered back in 1872, more than a decade before the invention of the electric drill. This could very well be irrefutable evidence of advanced technologies discovered on an artifact hundreds of years old, and yet, despite this evidence, the object itself is widely regarded by academics as nothing more than a hoax, and further research into the stone has been completely non-existent. The Rendlesham Forest Incident. In December of 1980, near Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England, there was a series of reports made by credible witnesses that detailed the event of an unidentified flying object landing in the forest and causing several unexplainable phenomena in the area. These witness reports would include sworn affidavits from multiple military officers in high positions and untold chaos for the coming years. At around 3 a.m. on December 26th, A security patrol at the Royal Air Force Base, Woodbridge, saw what they described as bright lights descending nearby the Rendlesham Forest. The security patrol described the lights as that of a downward aircraft and so quickly rushed to investigate their sighting. Working to follow its general direction in the forest, once they arrived within sight of the aircraft, the grouped men took notice of the fact that the animals nearby, native to that region of the forest, appeared to be screeching and going into a panicked frenzy. The men described what they saw as a glowing object, metallic in appearance, surrounded with attached and brightly coloured lights. One of the members of the security patrol, Sergeant Jim Peniston, later wrote in his memo that the team had encountered a craft of unknown origin, which only helped confirm the sighting of an unidentified flying craft. Additional evidence was gathered the next day by a high military official known as Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, of whom found spiked radiation readings at the supposed site of the landed craft within Rendlesham Forest, as well as a triangle of depression that sank within the ground as if a large object with a massive pressing force had recently been resting on that region. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt would later be punished and reprimanded for creating witness reports, sworn affidavits, and going on record to say that he had believed the event to be extraterrestrial in nature and that the incident had been covered up by both the governments of the United Kingdom and the United States. Hexagon on Saturn. In 1981, as both of the space probes involved in the Voyager mission passed by Saturn had began snapping many different angles of its surface, they discovered an anomalous property of the gas giant that is still unanswerable even to this day. Located at the north and south poles of the planet were large open vortexes. This was only made increasingly more mysterious as the probes soon discovered that the North Pole vortex created a massive hexagonal pattern on the planet. This was compounded in its strangeness as future NASA missions would later confirm this anomalous property never before theorized on many of the other planets in the solar system. Juno analyzing a strange hexagonal pattern on the North Pole of Jupiter, and Voyager 2 noticing vortexes on the poles of Neptune. Not only was the scientific community baffled by these findings and are still attempting to hypothesize the cause of the anomalous properties, but these discoveries led to a massive outcry from conspiracy theorists who had predicted this planetary behavior eons before the observation. The Hollow Earth community pointed to these open vortexes at the north and south poles of the planets as proof of the physics behind the conspiracy theory of the Hollow Earth hypothesis. In 1947, a man by the name of Admiral Byrd wrote a diary about his events of setting world records around the world. One of these entries included his journey to the North Pole, where he claimed he witnessed a massive open vortex that reached inside the Earth. When he flew inside, he claimed that there were inhabitants of the inside of the Earth that were not human but were entirely aware of human beings, the creation of our weapons of mass destruction, and the governments of the world. Many Hollow Earth conspiracy theorists pointed to this witness account as evidence of their hypothesis, but were argued against by scientists and physicists at the time, claiming for such an occurrence to be impossible. Interestingly enough, Google Earth blurs out the poles of our Earth, and international laws make it illegal for planes to fly directly over poles, despite it being the shortest path from certain areas to get across the Earth. This theory only gained more traction as proof of other planets in the solar system surfaced containing these vortexes. Life on an asteroid. In 2007, an astrobiologist at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center named Richard Hoover made a shocking discovery. When analyzing pieces of a meteorite which fell in France in 1864, he discovered structures that appeared to be fossilized microbes. Many NASA scientists challenged his hypothesis by stating that fossilization of microbes could have occurred as the meteorite struck the Earth and may not have been original inhabitants of the meteorite itself. After further research, however, this rebuttal was quickly disproven, as definitive proof was established that the fossilization occurred prior to the meteorite's landing. Richard Hoover specifically states in his papers and presentations his findings as Many of the filaments shown in the figures are clearly embedded in the meteorite rock matrix. Consequently, it is concluded that the filaments cannot logically be interpreted as representing filamentous cyanobacteria that invaded the meteorite after its arrival. They are therefore interpreted as the indigenous remains of microfossils that were present in the meteorite rock matrix when the meteorite entered the Earth's atmosphere. These reports and hypotheses only helped to contribute to the widely debated theory of panspermia, which was a recently hypothesized general theory of life which holds the belief that perhaps all life across the universe is seeded via meteorites. This posits forth the mathematical implications that perhaps life overall is not very rare and rather quite common. That perhaps even ourselves were planted here by a crashed meteorite millennia ago, that's worked and evolved into more complex life over time given theories of adaptation. Perhaps out there in the expanse of the universe across many different planets, there could be additional complex life that had the ability to be planted by a similar meteorite and evolve into intelligent life. Or perhaps, even more mysteriously, out there in the empty expanse of the cosmos on other Earth-like planets, there is life that evolved from a similar strain of microbes, and one day, if we ever have the pleasure of visiting the expanse of the universe, we would find on some distant planet humans like us.